Now, the Game Boy wasn't known for its fighting games, but this is one you should definitely check out.
This is Pixelated Audio, episode 43, featuring Power Quest.
Welcome to the bi-weekly video game music and retro gaming podcast, Pixelated Audio. I'm James.
And I'm Brian. Today we're going to be listening to some music from Power Quest on the Game Boy Color. It's a kind of overlooked gem, I think, and the soundtrack is just where this really kicks ass and stands out.
The track that brought us in was the opening title theme, Military Arts, composed by Koichi Fujiwara.
This is such a rad track.
Yeah.
Pumps you up. It's got that bass line. It's just octave, dun, 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 dun. Just, I don't know. Just gets me jazzed.
We've talked about the galloping before, and it just seems to be like a reoccurring theme for something that's very, like, you know, epic and upbeat and energetic and even heroic. And I think this track is totally all of those things and kind of has that Mega Man feel to it.
It does.
To me. That whole soundtrack for Mega Man does the same thing. Just gets you pumped and ready to go, and it's very fast-paced. So this track, I think, was so exciting. It's got me really ready to like punch this episode in the face.
I know, like we're sitting here, like just listening to this opening scene. We haven't even started recording yet, and we're listening to this, and we're doing some air guitar, and we're just jamming. Oh man, it's so good. Love it. Yeah, but I was listening to the soundtrack, and I just over and over, and just put it on repeat. And I'm just, man, it's so good. This is what like really like video game music is all about. I think it's an awesome overlooked gem that you guys are gonna really enjoy the music from. Anyways, Power Quest, aka Gekito Power Modeler in Japan, is an RPG-based fighting game that was released in 1998, developed by Japan System Supply.
It was published by Capcom in Japan, and Sunsoft handled the international version. So now the Japanese version was released for Game Boy, and it had Super Game Boy support, but the international version was released for the Game Boy Color, and it retained that Game Boy and Super Game Boy support. So basically, the international version was marketed to the newer Game Boy Color.
Yeah, I think so. Like when I first got this game, so to kind of give you a little bit of backlog, this isn't a game that I just found recently. Yeah. This is something that I actually have some memories of, because back when I think I was a freshman in high school, maybe, the Game Boy Color had just come out. Nintendo was really into that indigo color, and so I had that Game Boy Color, but the problem was there wasn't a lot of software for it yet.
Right.
And a lot of the transition, that kind of transition window, other than like, Super Mario Deluxe and stuff like that, was kind of backwards compatible games. And so the games that were Game Boy Color only had clear casing, and they really kind of stood out. But the ones that had Game Boy Color enhanced support had like a black casing around them. And this game was actually kind of marketed for everything. It was on the box it says Game Boy Color, but it was really kind of like an afterthought put in. The developers probably didn't originally have this in mind, but I was looking for more titles. I was looking, I just got this Game Boy Color, and I'm looking for more games. And I think I was in a Funko Land, and this game had probably been out, I don't know, a month or so, and it had already dropped in price. It must have been like $29.99 or something like that. And I was looking at the box art, and I was thinking like, wow, this looks pretty cool. There's mechs. I don't know anything about this game.
Robots.
Nothing about this game. So I went ahead and bought it and took it home and played it. And there's a few different modes, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But I really liked this game, and I really kind of fell in love with it in a certain way, but then it took a backseat, and I hadn't thought about it for a very long time. And then I'm driving home from work, I don't know, a few months ago, and the soundtrack came on, and I was like, hey, James, you gotta listen to this, dude. You gotta check this out. So you listen, and we're like, oh, all right, we're doing an episode.
Yeah.
This is too good to miss out. The music is phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while since we've done a Game Boy game or Game Boy Color at all. And I mean, I love the Game Boy music. And this was just a game you were really excited about to tell me about. And once I listened to that soundtrack, I was super pumped. I mean, just by that first track, I mean, that would really suck you into anything. And that being the title screen, would really get you excited to play.
And I dug through this old box of games I have that, I keep them in this like kind of, huge Tupperware kind of storage bin. And I dug this game out, and I was like, yes, I still actually have it. I didn't like trade it in because I was poor. But I took it out, and I put it on. I wasn't playing the color version just to kind of check it out. And it was just, it brought me back. Like, I was like, man, like I really enjoyed this title, and I'm glad we were able to kind of resurface it. And if you miss this game, you're really in for a ride, because the soundtrack is pretty cool.
Yeah, I remember when you sent me that photo when you found your cartridge, and I was like, oh man, that's cool. And I went online, and I mean, if you have a Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance SP, that's how I played it. You can find this for like $4 or $5, like in a really good quality cartridge. And it's just like, I popped in. I've been playing it all day today, like when we were getting ready for this episode, and it's just so fun. Yeah,
it's a really good one. But let's go ahead and talk about the developer a little bit.
So Japan System Supply was a small Osaka-based developing house and publisher that was founded in 1985. And it's a kind of an interesting little company. I mean, they didn't really have any major hits, but they produced some really cool titles.
Yeah, they did Pyokotan no Daimeiro for the Famicom. They did Shalvo 55 and Power Quest for Game Boy and Game Boy Color. There was Phantasy Star Gaiden and Terra no Yakata for Game Gear. They also had Chameleon Twist 1 and 2 for the N64. And I don't care what anybody says, I loved Chameleon Twist.
Yeah.
That was a great one. I never played the second one.
Yeah, I have the second one, but I've never played the first one. And I remember you telling me how much fun it was. And I was like, I need to get these in my list. And I've only found the second one so far at a decent price.
Yeah, like I think there was... Everybody would kind of tease me about Chameleon Twist. And Dusty, too. Dusty, who was on the Extra Life episode. We both really liked that game, and everybody was like, man, this is like the weakest title.
It looks super fun. From a playthrough, I thought it was super fun looking.
It's really good. Anyways, they did Koi no Summer Fantasy for the Sega Saturn. They also did Stone Age and Lifestorm 1 and 2 for Windows, as well as some other educational software. But the one that really kind of caught my eye is this little title called Bound High, and I'd never heard of it either. This is like the first... I feel like I should know about this, but I didn't. And it kind of stood out to me because apparently this was for the Virtual Boy. And right as development had finished and they had mastered the final ROM, Nintendo decided to close the platform and shelve the system because of sales. Rightfully so, though, because, I mean, really early on in the Virtual Boy life, like, people were already complaining, like, dizziness and shoulders hurting because you have to hunch over.
And headaches, I'm sure, from, like, your eyes and straining and stuff like that.
You know, there was a lot of rumor around it. I don't think that the whole, crazy dizziness and passing out and stuff was, true, but I didn't want to believe it because the Virtual Boy has kind of a special place in my heart. It was weird. I got it at a discounted rate, like way after it was out, when people were already trying to, basically throw them away. And it always kind of stuck with me. I always really liked it. Like I played through like Wario Land. I loved it. I thought it was like one of the best. There's a bunch of other titles that I really like, and I wish that this game would have been able to make its release, because apparently it sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, no, Virtual Boy is a system that's very high on my list to pick one up. I mean, every time you go to Japan, I'm like, keep an eye out for a really clean Virtual Boy set, and it's like I really want to play it, because I've never actually played anything on the Virtual Boy.
And they have box units like everywhere, like almost brand new, but they're like, $250 or something. So it's like, I think
might have to hold off a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Bound High was actually supposed to be like the showcase for this system.
Right.
So I guess you play as this character named Shalvo, and he can morph into a ball, kind of like Samus from Metroid, and you bounce around tiles and knock out enemies in this first-person perspective. So it sounds really cool, I guess even though it was canceled, the ROM is still floating around the internet. But I mean, I've never played it. I just said I've never played any Virtual Boy anything.
Right. But I mean, like, for this game, even though it was almost completely done it was completely done, it just never got made. I really do want to go back and try it out. Like, it's something like when I came across it, I was like, geez, man, like, how come I don't know about this game? Like, well, I mean, it's not one of those ones that's high on my list, but it's something that's definitely interesting. And it's too bad that it wasn't officially released, because if you're paying attention to when I was talking about the game releases, Shalvo, the main character of Bound High, actually made an appearance later on for the Game Boy in Shalvo 55.
Yeah, so I mean, did you go back and listen to the Shalvo 55 soundtrack at all?
I did actually, but it's kind of meh.
Yeah. So it doesn't have the same composer as Power Quest?
No. I didn't look it up, but it's not the same as Power Quest.
No. Well, yeah, I mean, even though they didn't produce a ton of titles, I mean, they actually managed to stay afloat until 2000 when they went out of business, unfortunately.
Yeah, there was a lot of companies that started really early out on like the MSX and Game Boy, NES and stuff like that I guess you couldn't produce with the technology. You couldn't produce the same quality titles, I guess, with such small teams. And so this company wasn't very big, and to be able to, stay around for that long was pretty impressive already.
Yeah, it seemed, we were talking about earlier, it seemed like the end of the 90s, the beginning of the 2000s, if you could cross that threshold, then maybe you could stay afloat. But if you couldn't, that seemed like that was the finish line for a lot of these small dev companies.
Right. Anyways, let's get into some more music. This track is called Power Town. I think you're going to like it. That was Power Town, composed by Koichi Fujiwara for Power Quest on the Game Boy.
Man, if you had to name a town Power Town and come up with a sound for it, that is the sound.
No, it's a wild track. It's wicked, dude. I love it. There's really cool.
So much variety in it. And I mean, right from the start, that stereo in your ears is so cool. And then there's like that rad bomb sound, like it's coming down. And then as soon as it hits, it's like that melody explodes and it just takes off. And I loved how there's, like I said, so much variety. And this song seems like it's almost like a showcase of the sounds that this game's gonna have.
Right. It's really funky. I couldn't stop like bobbing my head to it and just,
you really love that bass line.
Yeah, no, it was really funky. I don't know, like there's these notes, and we're gonna hear it throughout the rest of the soundtrack. There's a lot of swelling, like these swelling notes that kind of ramp up. There's a lot of that tone ramping. I think it's just really flexing the Game Boy's muscle for what it can do in the music department, the sound department. I think that this track is a great showcase of that. Anyways.
Yeah, I mean, with as exciting as that song was, I'm ready to get into some more music.
Yeah.
I mean, we've already listened to all the soundtracks, so we're just really excited for you guys to check it out.
Yeah. So what do we got next?
So the next track is called This House, and we'll be right back. The track you just heard was called This House, composed by Koichi Fujiwara for Power Quest on the Game Boy.
It's another cool track, man.
Yeah.
Seriously. It's, one thing I like about Koichi Fujiwara is that he's doing all these tracks and he really gives you this nice kind of rhythm a lot of the time before he lays out like the melody and like the other instruments that come in. It really kind of gets the whole your body moving, and before you even have to get into the melody. I think that's kind of a cool thing that he's doing every time.
Yeah, that was one thing that I really liked about this track was it gives you like 3 or 4 loops of that beat, and then there's like that cymbal crash, and then the melody comes in, so that you can still kind of, it's almost like it trains your ear to hear that beat, and then when the melody comes in, you can still hear that beat, so you can kind of maybe almost appreciate all of it together a little bit more.
Yeah, it's a cool track, a cool composer. I mean, there's not a lot of information on this guy. In fact, Koichi Fujiwara is credited as K Fujiwara, and he's a composer at Japan System Supply. Other sites, like I think it was Moby Games and stuff, say it's Kumiko Fujiwara, but that makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
Because Kumiko Fujiwara is like a director, producer of other titles and stuff, or I'm not sure what, but totally unrelated.
Yeah, totally different person.
Yeah, so I was like, well, why is that? So I found on a Japanese website that it was actually Koichi, and they were just wrong. So yeah, so you go to different websites and there's conflicting information. You know something's not quite right, and a lot of this is like kind of user content, user created content, and user contributed content. So you kind of have to always keep your eyes open to, there's always mistakes, and it's not intentional, but there's stuff out there.
It's a labor of love. I'm sure that we've probably had a mistake or two, and then, or in the future we may have more. But so like you said, there's not much on him. So we found Chameleon Twist 2, like we said before. I'm really excited now to go play more of this game because I really love this composer.
Yeah, I need to listen to the soundtrack because I don't think I've heard it. Yeah.
I was just asking you if we have it and we can check it out. But and other than that, I mean, Power Quest, and I think that's really it.
Well, apparently he did some sound programming for a PlayStation game, which is like this band simulation called Sold Out, and it was done by Make Software. And I don't know anything about this game, but I kind of looked up like some like playthroughs on YouTube and stuff. It looks pretty crappy.
Yeah,
it looks like, it's a band simulation game, so it's not like a not like a rhythm game. It's more of like a get the guitarist and get your singer and pay them this amount and kind of scout different people.
Kind of like a manager simulator.
Yeah, it's like
thing.
a managing kind of thing, like those sports managing games. It's not really a sports game. It's not really a
but it's like that
game.
same idea. Like you're kind of putting together a band. You got to manage everything, give them gigs, make sure they're getting paid.
Exactly,
stuff like that.
I mean, it could be cool. I don't know. I didn't play it, but it just when I was looking, I was just like, no,
well,
pass.
We saw when PlayStation came out, they pumped out titles like crazy,
Just
and some of them were just like complete crap. So
yeah. Anyways, this was a cool track, and I think that I wish there was more from Koichi Fujiwara. Maybe he's doing a lot more work now and just not credited, or goes by a different alias. But I couldn't find anything else. So let's talk about the game a little bit.
Yeah, so when the game starts out, school is over for the lead character and summer's starting.
They never mention his name, do they?
No, they don't. I think that was just so that you could kind of imagine yourself or, your name on the character.
I'm pretty sure it was Brian.
Yeah, I was thinking it was James. So.
But I remember how awesome the last day of school was.
Oh, yeah.
Teachers were already checked out. They didn't care anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it was the best. Like, you just cleaned out your desk, slam dunk it in the garbage can, and you'd head out for summer. And it's like the best day ever.
That was it. Played a lot of Foursquare.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was just pretty much keep you quiet. It was like daycare, basically, the last day of school.
Oh, man. Brings me back.
Yeah. So, I mean, imagine it's not only the last day of school and summer starting, but there's this new craze that's hitting, which is fighting model robots.
Yeah, that would have been so awesome because I remember for me one summer it was Pogs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Pogs.
What a dumb game.
Yeah, I mean, that was just stupid, but they had Pogs for everything.
Yeah, right. Anyways, you head back to your house and Lewis shows up. He's your best friend. And he's like, hey, check this out. There's this new tournament starting up soon. We should enter it so we can start battling our robots against other people.
Yeah, I mean, but once again, like the downside of being a kid is those lack of funds. So together they have enough money for like one part.
Right. That's like one Pog.
Yeah. That's not enough for a tournament. So and once again, you're kind of bummed. And,
and your mom is like, why you guys so bummed out? Like, how about some juice?
Yeah.
She offers you juice.
Yeah, that's a very mom thing. Everything can be made better with a little bit of juice.
Hey, James, you broke up with your girlfriend?
Yeah.
Hey, come over to my house, man. How about some juice?
Yeah. Well, as long as you got some pomegranate juice, I think I'll be all right. Yeah. So, and then after that, she's like, oh, yeah, there's this letter that came for you. And you're just like, man, Mom, like, come on, give me my mail. And so you open it up, and it turns out you've won the grand prize in this fighting model contest that you entered. So you get this coupon, and the coupon is basically good for your pick of any robot at the shop for free. So, I mean, now you can enter this tournament. So that story has a very emotional roller coaster for a child. I mean, it's like
pretty deep.
Yeah, it's like school's over, you're waiting for that bell to ring, and then the excitement, it just explodes, and then you're like, oh man, like let's join this tournament, and everything sounds cool, and you're like, oh, I don't have any money, so you're bummed again, and then you won this contest, which is like impossible. So I think I would need a nap after all this.
Maybe I'll get you some juice.
Yeah. And another turn of great events is there's actually some time to test out your robot and get good at it before this tournament starts. So you can take it out and fight other chumps around town and just get in good shape for this tournament.
Right. And the way you get from fight to fight is by walking around the overworld map, which is basically just the town you live in. Mm-hmm. It's a single screen view that never really changes. Kind of simple color palette and not a lot. There's a few different houses. Yeah. I think like the shop is there, a playground.
There's like a playground. There's like a factory.
Right.
There's like
not
a small little town.
Right. But you battle different opponents that you find throughout the town, and you get this little kind of cutscene with a dialogue, and it lets you know that they're ready to kind of fight. Now, like we were saying, this game's RPG based, and what we mean by that is that each battle you succeed in, you earn credits, and those credits can be used to improve your robot by letting you kind of tailor them to your liking. You can get different, power up for like the punching abilities and different stuff for your jumping abilities and your different attacks and powers up that way.
Such a cool idea. I mean, it sounds so awesome.
And the story progresses, or like a special event is triggered automatically after fighting a certain number of people. And these are usually some kind of like tournament or like a boss fight.
So if that's not enough for you to get excited about this game, there's actually bad kids that don't fight fair. So in the first batch you come across, they call themselves the Hyena Gang. And that's not it. There's actually this deep story to this game that we don't want to get into to spoil for you, because you might want to pick up this game on eBay for like I said, I got mine for like $4, and it was super clean and really it works really great. So
and part of the reason why we don't want to spoil it for you is because we don't really know it ourselves.
Yeah.
We didn't make it that far in the story.
Yeah.
Because it's it's not really that good.
Yeah, there's other modes that are pretty fun.
When I first bought this game, I think I played the story for maybe 30 minutes to maybe an hour, and then I was like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah.
Get into the fighting. It's where it's at.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's get in some more music. We're going to play a track called Unsigned, and we'll be right back.
You just heard Unsigned, composed by Koichi Fujiwara for Power Quest on the Game Boy.
Another track that starts off with that simple kind of rhythm and then goes into the melody again. It's a pretty cool track. It's short. It's like a minute long.
Yeah, this one was a very Mega Man sounding one to me as well. Like I love that like double like kick pedal sound that they have, then they kind of repeat, and that really reminds me of kind of like the fast pace of Mega Man, and so this song was very energetic to me. I liked it. I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, the bass again is like dun digga dun digga dun digga dun digga dun, and I like that. I think something about that for action type games, to fighting games, what have you, platformers, Mega Man style, it just it does kind of make me want to progress. I think it's one of those things that you have in the back of your mind that is pushing you forward in the game. It's kind of like that kind of subconscious that you want to keep moving forward. You don't want to be stagnant and stand still. You want to just progress. And I think that this whole soundtrack kind of keeps that flow going the whole time.
Yeah, like that fast pace makes you want to throw kind of caution to the wind and just blast through the level and just go as fast as you can. Where, as a kid, when I would hear songs that were a little bit slower, maybe I felt like I could lollygag a little bit more, but then you'd run into like, the timer, whoops. And so I think stuff like this, it really keeps that intensity up. And for a fighting game, I think that's perfect.
Yeah. Anyways, let's get into our next track. This is called 1995.
You just heard 1995, composed by Koichi Fujiwara for Power Quest on the Game Boy.
It's a really dancey track.
Yeah.
It's a lot different than the other ones we've played so far. This isn't my favorite one on here.
No, it's not my favorite song on this entire soundtrack, but I do like it a lot. I like
It's cool.
that very bouncy beat. It's super exaggerated, almost like a clown. So, but then like with the melody that comes on top, it feels really cool. It doesn't come across as like really cheesy and kind of stupid.
It comes like, to me, it does kind of come off a little bit like a cheesy club like house mix, but I do think that the diversity kind of there is some kind of repetition in there that kind of gets a little bit old, but there is some diversity with the instruments that kind of mixes it up, and I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
another cool track.
Well, I think one of the things I really liked was those trailing notes. Like I love those like long drawn out notes, and I really like that for this track. That just kind of added to the fun to me, and I can really see in the background this being kind of fun for a fighting game. Like you're moving around kind of crazy. It's almost like a dance.
I don't know where this actually takes place in the game, but let's go ahead and move over to the gameplay a little bit, because this game has some really cool modes to it that definitely make it worth playing, I think.
Right.
So it's a really nice idea to add these RPG elements like the upgrades and the equipment system, but the parts cost so much, and later on it gets even worse. They just cost so much that you can't even afford them. You can never actually get them. So even the most credits that you can get in like one battle, I think it's like 20 or in the beginning. You get like 20 credits after a fight, and that's it. And some of these parts cost maybe up to 10,000 even.
Yeah, I think the first round of upgrades, it's like 1,000 to 4,000 per upgrade, and it's like 20 points per battle. That's going to take you like 3 hours to get one part.
Exactly. You're going to have to do these fights over and over again, and each battle can take 3 to 5 minutes. So it really like makes you work and work and work. And, sure, there's events that give you a little bonus here and there of like maybe 1,000 credits or so. But every time you finish an event, there's a new version of parts that already comes out.
Yeah.
And these parts, now they're even more expensive than the last ones that you couldn't afford.
1,000 is not going to cut it.
Right. Now, you can find like credits laying around the streets, but they're impossible to find because there's no indication. You just kind of have to walk over them at the right time. So it does make it a little bit challenging to want to look around, because it's like, well, I don't want to go everywhere again between each fight just to see if there's any money laying on the ground.
Walk all the streets.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not much either. So, the other thing about this game too that the story kind of turned me away from, I think, was the password system. Yeah,
the passwords can always be hard as a kid, because you got to write it down, you got to save it, and then when you fire it up again, you may not get to play for very long. So.
And I think that's what kind of kept me from playing the story for very long. I think what I did, this is just how I could see myself doing it, was sit down, play the game, enjoy it for 30, 40 minutes, maybe even an hour, I don't know. But then, it's time for dinner or something, or it's time for bed, and I'm like, well, I'm not writing down this password.
Yeah.
Nah, I'll just play single player tomorrow.
Yeah.
So
we don't want to dwell on the story mode any more than we already did, because we really just wanted to see these robots fight each other in the really cool 2D Street Fighter style that it had.
So when the game starts up, there's 5 different robots you can choose from. And this is in the story mode. After you get that coupon, you go to the shop and you get to pick one of these 5 robots. And they each have their own stats and specials, making you really want to find the one that works best for you. And I really like that they're not just clones of each other. They're all kind of unique, and they have their own specials, kind of like your Street Fighter.
They're all very different. They have different moves. And so you're definitely going to find one that works better for you than someone else.
Yeah, and they look very different as well, which is good, because they kind of stand out on their own. You don't mistake robots. There's only 5, so it makes it kind of easy to pick out which is which, and you kind of learn their moves and stuff as time goes on.
Well, and we had talked too for the story mode, that kind of hurts it a little bit, because everyone has the same 5 robots to pick from.
So. No, that's the most tedious aspect, and since you have to get so much money, we said we're not going to go back to the story, but it irks me so bad, because that repetition, it gets old really fast. And so definitely just skip the story mode altogether. But so the first robot you can choose is Max, and he's like the basic model with, simple combos, making him kind of ideal for beginners. Gong is kind of like a big guy. He's a little bit slower, but what he makes up for it is with his strength. And he can also take a lot more damage. And he's kind of like a favorite of the bad kids. So like the hyena gang and stuff, they'll be using Gong as like their robot of choice.
Yeah. So then you have Axe, and he's really one of the more balanced characters of the game. So he really was someone that a lot of people liked when they played this. He was kind of their favorite pick.
He's a pretty cool looking robot too.
Yeah, he kind of has like this long alien, from the movie Aliens. He has that thing, that long head, which is kind of cool. And he's even like a purple, which is kind of neat.
Yeah.
Then there you have Speed, who's actually the only female in the game, and as you would expect, she uses speed over strength to as her advantage, and she has a lot more kicks.
Yes.
So like Max actually has a lot more punches. Speed uses kicks, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, so you can kind of think of it as like your Ken versus your Chun-Li.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the default character that usually people choose, kind of more balanced, well-rounded, easy to pull off his moves and combos and stuff like that. And Speed is a lot more kick-based. It's a lot more Chun-Li style.
And I really liked Speed a lot. And so for the last character in story mode, there's Lon, which is one of my favorite characters, and I know he was one of yours as well.
Right.
He's a lot like Axe. He's very well balanced, but he kind of focuses on longer range attacks.
Yeah, he's a really cool character. I like playing as him a lot because he's got the Blanca roll, but he's also got like the uppercuts, and he's got like a lot of cool, really long range attacks that make it really fun to play. It kind of fits my style a little bit more.
Yeah, and he's got like a mustache and beard. And he uses like nunchucks, and I love when he grabs someone, he like pulls out like a container. It's almost like he pulls out part of their health and just drops it. Like a boss.
It's pretty cool. Now there is one more character, and it's kind of odd. It's only in the single player mode, and his name is Borat, and he is this little odd robot. It's kind of like Wall-E.
Yeah, he's got like little tank wheels.
Right. But what makes him odd, and I don't know why they would put him in a fighting game, because he can't block, he can't do any special moves. He just he has this like weak punch that he pulls out. That's it.
I mean, he can't even jump, which is crazy. I mean, but I think it's like, it's kind of funny though that they would take the time to make this guy, and maybe he was an afterthought. Maybe it's like a joke.
Now it is kind of funny. So when you play the story mode, when you actually play the story mode, and you get to choose the 5 characters, that are actually in the story mode, and you purchase them at the shop, you can see that Borat is sitting on the shelf.
Oh, nice. I didn't notice that.
Yeah, I'll take a screenshot and send it to your way. But I thought that was kind of a cool little touch, because you can't play as him in the story at all.
Because that would be totally ridiculous to even choose him. But in fight mode, it's kind of fun. Like, it's like this totally stupid, like maybe trick your friend into trying him out, and I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah,
this
what
guy
is
doesn't
this
do
all
anything.
about?
He just punches.
Yeah, so anyways, let's get into our next track. This is called Thrust Up. It's an amazing track. This is one of my favorites. I think you guys are going to love it. That was Thrust Up, composed by Koichi Fujiwara for Power Quest on the Game Boy. It's one of my favorite tracks.
Yeah.
So cool.
Good one.
Yeah.
It's a really good one.
You know, there's something about the harmonizing leads in all sorts of like NES, Game Boy music by these Japanese composers that, I don't know, it just sings to my soul. It's just like so like, I feel so invigorated. So it's just so clean. I just love, like, it's just like perfect harmony. It sounds really cool.
No, this track definitely had that classic sound to it that just what made early chiptune music sounds so great. It's very heroic again, and I think that they really start mashing that kick pedal kind of sound in there. I thought that was really cool. It's just like it's just like going off in the background.
The kick drum just is so like predominant, and it's just very heavy. And I think that that's pretty awesome because the high end notes and that kick drum when they're playing together, you get these really, really high pitched tones that add vibrato in, and we notice that a lot on the rest of the soundtrack as well. But the kick drum, as the vibrato is happening with these high notes, really kind of like brings you back down to earth, and just I don't know, just a really cool moving piece.
It goes together really well. There was a great choice of, like you said, the high notes and the low notes working together and giving you this cool feeling. I really liked it. It had like an alarm going off kind of feel to it, which I thought was kind of neat. It made me feel like I was in danger.
I think I know what you're talking about. That in
the beginning,
and then it has it's weird because it has this like dissonant chord. It's like
I noticed that.
And I don't know. It was just really cool. I think that's really unique, and it's not easy to do on the Game Boy to make that very dissonant sound, and also kind of like an arpeggiated tone. It sounds almost like a phone ringing or vibrating or something. It really stood out to me.
Yeah. All right, so now it's time to move on to the fighting system, because this was a surprising highlight of this game.
Yeah, so in the game, single player mode is listed as 1P mode, and this is kind of like, I guess by modern standards, that this is the equivalent of survival mode. And as the name suggests, you fight a constant series of battles against opponents that increase difficulty and stuff over time until you lose. Of course, this is like seriously brought down by the size of the tiny 6-man roster. But there's also like a 2-player versus mode, but you had to find somebody with an actual Game Boy link cable to do it, and this game. So the chances of that happening, I didn't know anybody that had this game, so I only played single player. It was really cool, though.
I would have to say it might be fun to try 2-player, but
no, I'd love to play it. We should definitely try to get that going, because that'd be fun.
Yeah. Anyway, unlike most fighting games, which are ported from the arcade, like your Street Fighters and Mortal Kombats, that came to the Game Boy later on, Power Quest controls are actually really intuitively designed for the system you're playing on. Like you have B as your weak attack, A as your strong attack, up is jump, and really everything else is what you'd expect it to be.
There's something about the control system that I love in this game. The controls are so tight and so responsive that when you're fighting, it feels like any other arcade. It doesn't feel like it's slowed down. It doesn't feel like it's this kind of weak fighting system. It was very well thought out, I think. And it made me just want to keep going back and back to the fighting over and over and over. And that's, I think, why I skipped the story, because I wanted to just do the fighting, and that was the important thing.
Yeah, it was very surprising. I mean, I have Street Fighter 2 for Game Boy, and I just really don't like it. I think I might have Mortal Kombat as well, and it's like they're just really bad. So when you told me about this fighting game on the Game Boy, I was like, all right, like this music better be good. And then when I started playing, like, you get really excited because it moves really fast. There's a lot of combos. There's a lot of just attacks and variety. Even though there's only 5 characters, it feels like each 5 of those characters were just really designed well, which makes it even funnier that Borat has like no moves at all.
I know. This game could be ported, I think, from the Game Boy to like a console and do really, really well.
I would have loved to seen a console version of this.
Maybe add a few extra buttons like Super NES, or even if this was an NES game and it played as well as this game does, I think it would do really well. And because there wasn't a lot of NES fighting games. We talked about the Turtles episode and the Turtles fighting game, but this really kind of stood out, I think, on the Game Boy. And the fighting system is just so well thought out that it makes it really fun to play. You have your health bars and everything is very clearly defined. It doesn't get in the way. And then below that, you have your power meter. And when that power meter builds up, from landing, successful attacks, you can pull off these really devastating blows, like these special things. So like Lon, for example, will have this glowing power fist. And when you hit an enemy, their whole body will kind of like vibrate and glow, and like you take off a ton of damage. It's really hard to land that move, but like all the other specials are kind of difficult to pull off, but when you do it, it's really fun and really rewarding. Yeah,
and one thing that's really cool is next to that little special bar, there is a number, and you can actually have it level up more than once. And it's
right.
And it's neat. I thought maybe with the limit of the 2 buttons that like select would be the button you would hit to do the power up, but it's just like a really cool button combination you have to memorize and I think there might actually be more than one special attack that they do. There's like more than one powered attack, which is pretty cool.
There's parts that you can kind of equate to like Smash Brothers, I think, because certain timing of buttons, like going forward on the D-pad and B at the same time, kind of will do a more powerful attack or a more charged attack, and doing like A and the forward and maybe like a roll back, like a reverse Hadouken will do a completely different move than if you were to just throw that in there randomly. And I think that having these little subtle touches to how you actually play the game and you move with the D-pad and the buttons at the same time make it a little bit special, because you're always pulling off these new kind of grapples and these new kind of moves. It's really cool.
Yeah. And some of the moves that they do just normally are just really fun. Like I said before, Lon has this attack where he'll just reach out and grab you. They all have like a grapple attack.
Right.
And like he'll grab you, and then it's like he pulls like a power cell out of your body, and then he just like holds it out and just like drops it.
Yeah.
And I was like that's so cool. And I think like Speed does this one where she grabs you and then she does like a flutter of kicks, and then you go flying, and then like Gong, he like grabs you and like kind of like bounces you off. Yeah.
You were saying he's like what was the character?
He reminded me a little bit of like Rufus from Street Fighter.
Yeah.
Because he's a heavier set guy, but not like E Honda, where like E Honda still does like a lot more like hand attacks and stuff.
Right.
Like Rufus always used like his body as well, and Gong like will slam his stomach against you and like slam you into the ground and stuff like that, which I thought was cool. And so they'll do like Axe will shoot. He has like projectiles he can shoot at you, and
very Hadouken based. Yeah,
and I think Lon has this thing where like a energy wave will travel along the ground, and there's just a lot of really cool attacks that these do.
Yeah, we see a lot of different influences from like King of Fighters, Street Fighter, even I want to say even like Killer Instinct has some kind of parts in there and stuff as well. Maybe some Mortal Kombat aspects too. But let's get in some more music. We have Blue Storm. This is a cool track. Let's check it out.
You just heard Blue Storm, composed by Koichi Fujiwara for Power Quest on the Game Boy.
That bass line, dude, so good.
So good.
It's so funky. Oh my god, I love it.
I think one thing I like about this track is that it seems kind of simple and laid back compared to some of them that we've played.
Right.
But under the surface, it's a lot more complex.
Yeah. No. Do you want to hear that bass track, dude?
Yeah.
Well, let's see if we can just solo out that bass line there. Man, it's so good. Not this part.
It's awesome.
Dude, I want to be that bass player. That was awesome. Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. It's really awesome to see, like, when you can turn off channels, like how much detail one channel is doing, or a couple channels together.
You can really see the thought process that went into it. Like, sometimes certain channels kind of meld together, and it's hard to, really kind of focus on the individual instruments. But when you solo it out, you can really see what the composer had in mind, and see how kind of the puzzle pieces fit together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let's move on to our next track. It's called Ancient Regime, and we'll be right back.
That was Ancient Regime, composed by Koichi Fujiwara.
Man, one thing that I really liked about that track was it seems like almost for the first time a darker, more villainous kind of track, I think.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where it comes. This might play later on in the game, like the end of the tournament, and like there's really evil Team Rocket.
Yeah, maybe it's like like the Hyena Gang or something like that. It's like maybe their music.
Yeah, but no, it's a cool track. I think that there's some things going on in there that are really clever for the Game Boy, because there's a lot of Game Boy games that use very your standard chord progressions, your standard 4/4 beat, and there's a lot of syncopation that Fujiwara is doing, and a lot of different tricks and different plays on how to use the hardware, which make the soundtrack really unique, because there are some little repetitive riffs and stuff that he reuses, but at the same time he kind of combines new things in, new elements. Like there's this one part in this track that he has this little tiny, it almost sounds like a triangle, like a ding ding ding, and I thought that was rad. I didn't hear it the first time, and so being able to kind of listen under a magnifying glass, it really stood out to me.
Yeah, I really liked there's like this whoop kind of sound right before it starts getting really heavy, and then I like how that it ramps up, and then there's like a breakdown to that ramping up before it leads on to the next part, and then it kind of leads into that loop, which I thought was really cool. It had like this really good progression between the different sections of the song, which I liked a lot.
Well, let's get into our next track, because we have a lot more music to play.
Yeah.
This is called Great Sweater, composed by Koichi Fujiwara.
You just heard Great Sweater, composed by Koichi Fujiwara.
Another cool track. Again, it doesn't really start up until about halfway through the song. You get that repetition in the beginning, and then it just kind of transfers. At first, I was like, man, I think this is just looped over and over.
Yeah.
And you listen to it, and like a minute and a half in, it like the kind of the melodies and those harmonies all kind of ramp up together, and everything just kind of fits. It sounds really rad. I like this track.
No, one thing about this that made me kind of laugh a little bit was the title. I mean, Christmas is coming up, and then like Great Sweater, that's like something no one's ever said. Christmas, like a sweater. But I mean, this track was really cool. It had a lot of those long notes, and I liked that it was accompanied by this really short, fast beat. Like all the drum beats were very short. Like they didn't kind of ring out or anything. And there was like this part where it just leaves you with just that really heavy beat that's going really quickly, and it really reminded me of like the Ghost in the Shell kind of music.
Oh yeah.
Like it's very dancey, almost like GameBoy techno type stuff.
Kind of like a synth poppy techno trance.
Yeah, and I thought it was pretty cool. I really like this track. It's another one that kind of gets your energy really going.
Yeah, there's a lot of subtleties that he throws in that are only subtle if you're not paying attention, but like these very predominant little kind of jingles in the background that just sound really cool. And I think that's why the soundtrack just really grabbed our attention, because there's so much going on. It's not just like this simple pattern over and over. There's little unique things being thrown in, and that diversity really kind of keeps the soundtrack fresh every time you're listening to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's really surprising like what you can pay attention to more if you drop out the visuals and listen to this music out of context, because a lot of times when you're playing a game, like you're subconsciously hearing all that music and you're like, oh, I really love this, but because you're so ingrained into watching moves and trying to get ready to dodge and stuff like that. But I really, that's one thing I always loved about listening to video game music outside of the context is you just hear so much, and then jamming the headphones on, getting that stereo effect is always
especially
really cool.
When we're looking at it from like a critical like eye, when we're really kind of analyzing it here together. This is when we really notice a lot of this stuff, and it makes it, you guys listening with us, you're listening to these tracks and you're picking up, I'm sure that you're aligning with a lot of the same things that we're hearing. You guys are like, oh yeah, I did notice that, because it's very, very obvious in a lot of these songs, but it's not until you really kind of take it out of context that sometimes you notice this.
Yeah, and since we've kind of gone on a little long with this block, we have one more track before we kind of move on to a little bit more. We have the track is called ABC Shop, and we'll be right back.
That was ABC Shop, composed by Koichi Fujiwara for Power Quest on the Game Boy. Awesome track, right?
Yeah, it's super fun. I like how it's very simple in the beginning, like we've seen a lot of these songs, and then it kind of picks up, and then it really gets that guitar going, and there's just a lot of really subtle like stereo panning going on. It's like maybe just like one little note in the ear, and it comes back. And
there's a lot going on.
Very
actually.
detailed.
Yeah, this was almost our track coming in with the podcast with this episode. And we kind of decided to change it up, but it would have worked well too. It's really cool. It's really fun, really funky. It goes back into that. I mean, by now you should be able to kind of see his style. By all the tracks that we've played, they all have a very similar tone to them. They're all very different, but definitely make this his style.
Yeah, and that's one thing that really makes me sad to see, that he only has 2, maybe 3 games on his credits list.
Yeah.
Because his attention to detail, and then being able to take and do something a little bit different on a system that had a lot of people do a lot of stuff. I think it sucks to see that he didn't have more work. I mean, I'm sure he's doing something else, but it would have been really exciting to see what his music would have sounded like for other games on other systems.
Right, especially stuff that was more mainstream, even.
Yeah.
Like something that had more of a mass appeal, because this game definitely does not have that.
Yeah, that and like Chameleon Twist too. It's not like those were games that were like chart toppers or anything.
Right.
So,
but maybe could have been big had it come out. Had the timing been right. Had the audience been maybe the right age. Maybe it was a different crowd, targeted at a different crowd.
Well, and I think too, like the fighting games that do well on the Game Boy were very limited. And then, I mean, having someone like Sunsoft backing you in the international release, that could have been huge. Sunsoft has amazing games,
and they had all their licensed stuff was really well done. So
that's a name that people could have seen. Sunsoft. All right, I'm gonna take a risk on this.
Let's talk about the graphics a little bit, because we haven't really mentioned them too much. And for a Game Boy Color game that wasn't like designed for the Game Boy Color, it was kind of like that backwards compatibility version. It actually looks really cool. I think that the color palette looks really nice. I mean, maybe you could shed a little more light on it.
Yeah, I think one thing that I really liked was that the colors are limited, and on a small screen, it makes it very easy to distinguish what's going on. The backgrounds are really detailed. There's a lot of really cool stuff. Like there's park benches and statues, and there's even like dogs sitting in the background.
Yeah, fountains and like birds and stuff, I think.
Yeah, it's a little weird to think of these as like remote controlled little robots, because they seem like adult size.
They seem huge.
Yeah, but I mean the color palette is really good. I think that it didn't need more colors to kind of stand out, and maybe more colors might have made it difficult. I would have liked to seen maybe some more colors in the little like cutscene artworks. They're usually pretty flat colored, or very like 2 colors maybe. I would like to see a little bit more of that, but I really felt that the palette was great. The textures that it created, the different size of sprites was really nice to see the variety. There's a lot of visual variety for how limited everything was.
You know what the palette reminds me of? It reminds me of like a Neo Geo Pocket Color game.
Yes.
Like if you look at like the Mega Man fighting game, like the Power Fighters game on Neo Geo Pocket Color, or if you look at maybe some like the King of Fighters series games on Neo Geo Pocket Color, it has a very similar, because the sprites are only using like, I think it's like 4 colors. Yeah. And they look kind of basic. And obviously this is for backwards compatibility, because, it has to look good in black and white, or yellow and brown, or whatever.
Yeah, the pea green.
Yeah, as well. It has to look good on those older systems.
Yeah, there's a lot of there's not a lot of visual variety, but that allows each character to really stand out, or the trees in the background to really feel like a group of trees that if something goes in front of it, you're not going to get lost in front of those trees.
Right. Now, so the title screen from the international version, we should kind of talk about that a little bit. It's really cool, actually. It looks really well done in color. If you look at the Game Boy, the Japanese release, it's a little bit different, but at the same time, it has its own cool parts as well.
Yeah. Yeah, so for the US or international release, the word Power Quest is in like a green. It's a very limited color still, but it has color to it. It was nice. There's like these gears that spin in the background,
right? And
you see, I think is that Axe?
Yeah, I think that's Axe.
So kind of like the main character that you would see on he's like in the foreground of the box art. But so for the Japanese one, there's color to it. It's blue, but it's more of a monotone, like blue and kind of like a tan. But there's like this border around it, which is really cool. You see like this schematic drawing, almost like a blueprint drawing of Axe, and then you see like him from the front, like half of him from the front, and then half of him from the back. And I thought that's very cool to see, like the robots.
And to be clear, that's the Super Game Boy.
Okay,
palette. Yeah. So you do get kind of that bezel on the Super Game Boy version in the international version as well, but it doesn't have the same colors. And what's also kind of different about the title screen in the Japanese version is that the robot Axe, it looks more like a robot, whereas the international release, it looks more humanoid. It has definitely like a face, like a skin tone to it. And one thing that is kind of different about the US version and the European version is that Sunsoft was very kind of adamant about putting Japan System Supply
Oh yeah,
on the title screen, whereas Capcom didn't. They didn't even
for the
include them
Japanese
at all.
release.
Yeah, and so I think that that's kind of a cool touch from Sunsoft because they didn't have to do that, but I think making it obvious that this is a development company that should be credited. We should put this on the title screen. I think that was way cool of them.
Yeah, because I've noticed that like on the Japanese one, it just says Capcom, and then like and all rights reserved and stuff like that. Whereas on the international one, it says Japan System Supply, Sunsoft, and then licensed by Nintendo. So they even gave like Nintendo its credit,
licensing credit.
Yeah, so I mean that could have played into a little bit of different layout. Plus, you see on the international one, it has start, continue, 1P, and versus, whereas like the Japanese one, it just has start, continue, and versus.
Yeah, they didn't even have a one-player option.
Yeah, so there was like, they had a lot less room on the international one for like graphics and stuff, so that could have played a little bit into the reorganization of it.
Right. The international version as well also has, so they released this everywhere, in the US and Europe probably at the same time, and instead of doing individual copies, they localized it and they put all the localizations on the title screen. So after you pick the title screen, you pick the language. There's the English or United States English. There's German, Italian, French, and Spanish. And it's pretty cool. I mean, obviously I played in US English, but it was cool that they just bundle it all and they're like, hey, let's just ship it. Yeah,
because I kind of like that idea instead of having these region-locked copies or maybe not even region-locked, but it's just like a copy that's just one language. Whereas for this, you just print one set of games and it works for everyone except for Japan.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Anyways, let's get into our next track. It's called Drive Out. Absolutely awesome track.
That was Drive Out for Power Quest on the Game Boy.
It's a pretty happy track.
Yeah, I like it a lot. This is probably actually my second favorite song in this entire soundtrack.
I'm smiling when I'm listening to it because there's some just silly parts in there. There's like da 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 dun 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 dun.
Yeah, no, you were dancing along to it. It was making me laugh. I think this track has, to me, a little bit of a Sonic vibe.
I see that.
There's actually some sounds that I feel like are very Sonic-like, but then just like the tone of the song, it was very fun, kind of fast-paced. It reminded me of maybe like a very themed level, kind of like Casino Nights, but not Casino Nights, like some other type of theme, but something that's a very heavily themed level. I thought it was very cool with the dancey, very pop sound to this one.
Yeah, sometimes that just
got you excited.
Like, I'm not a big pop fan, but like in games, I realized I am a pop fan. Like I love pop music, you know, but it's in games. It's like, you know, this, you know, top 40 charts pop music, it just drives me crazy. But
like pop music is kind of like sugary candy, but then like with pop music that's out there for everyone else, it also, the lyrics are also like sugary candy, and it's like,
I think that's what drives me nuts.
Yeah, that's usually me too. But whereas like the music, it's still kind of like fun and really makes you feel good, and you know, makes you want to move or something like that. So I think it's nice.
So we've been talking about the kind of pros and cons about this game, and what are your final thoughts? Because I'm curious, because, you know, for me the fighting aspect is so well rounded, but the story is just so lacking.
Yeah, I agree. I think that as far as a fighting game on the Game Boy, it really surprised me, really blew me out of the water, and I think that kind of has tinted a little bit of the story aspect. I think the story aspect, when I look back on it, it's a little weak. The 5-character roster really hurt it a lot.
Oh, big time.
I was saying to you that I think that if you have maybe just 5 playable characters, and then you can play against non-playable characters, where even if they're
like, they had more more of a roster.
Yeah, like more different sprites. Even if they were more of just like a sprite swap, where they had like a lot of them had very similar moves,
right? But
they just look different. That would have been nice, just to see that you're not playing against the same 5 characters. And I kind of get that, like, that might have been all that was on the store shelves, were those 5 characters,
right?
But I would have liked to seen a little bit more variety, or maybe people that modded their characters more or something. But
exactly, like if you could kind of, you know, modify your characters before the 1-player mode, you can say, I want this attached, and have that variety. That might be a lot more fun. I think they could have spent their time on the single-player mode,
right,
and just totally ditched the story altogether, and really just focused on it as a fighter. They could have had a little backstory for the characters, kind of like how Street Fighter does.
Yeah, you beat like the group of people, and then you get a little hint. It's like, you know, what that character's about or something, which is what most fighting games do. But
really fleshing out that fighting aspect of it would just have made this game so much better. Because if you look at reviews, you know, there's the official Nintendo magazine. Obviously, they love everything. You know, they're kind of biased, but they got a 92 out of 100, which is actually pretty good. But there's all these other like international magazines. There's Consoles Plus, Total Germany, Mega Fun. They all gave it like pretty low reviews.
Well, Consoles Plus was like at the lower end. It was like a low B, like a B minus. But I kind of agree with. I think this is probably, if I had to grade it, I would say maybe like as overall like a C plus B minus.
Right.
As if it was just the fighter, I would say that was probably like an A.
Oh, totally, totally agree with you.
But I think I could see it being very hard to pass up the idea of like an RPG fighting game, because especially with like Pokemon just blowing up, and this was like Pokemon mixed with Street Fighter, I thought, and I was like, as soon as I heard that, I was like, wow, that sounds really awesome.
Right.
And then the story just was not like on the level of an RPG.
Well, I think they're cashing in on a lot of different franchises too, right? They want that fighter that was really popular in like the early to mid 90s. And then, you know, RPGs were also really blowing up, and they thought, how can we do both of these together?
Yeah.
And it was a good idea, but it was an idea that probably should have been scrapped.
Well, and it could have been something that hurt them as well, because an RPG fighter is not something we've heard a lot of. So when that game came out, some people might have been like, an RPG fighter, I don't know about that, let me pass. It's not like, even though with the Sunsoft name attached to the international one, I can maybe pass on that.
Right.
But if it was just a fighter and it got good reviews, people might be like, well, Street Fighter was terrible, Mortal Kombat was terrible on the Game Boy. This non-licensed game could be really awesome.
Yeah, it would be cool if they kept with it, and they made, you know, more versions, and they focused only on the fighting. But I think overall, is this game worth going back to? Yes. I totally wholeheartedly say that, you know, if you have a chance to play this game, however you want to play it, however you can play it and try it out, and tell us what you think. You know, let us know in the comments, because it's something that not a lot of people got to see and not a lot of people got to experience, and something on the early handheld system that is this good in the fighting regards is kind of a special gem, I think.
Yeah, I would have loved to see this come out on the eShop and get like a Wi-Fi two-player
release.
That would be
Excellent.
really awesome.
Excellent.
Drop the RPG.
I would
just
spend
do the
$8 on that right now.
And you and I would sit there and play it. It would be fun.
Big time. Anyways, so today we covered Power Quest on the Game Boy Color, composed by Koichi Fujiwara.
And if you want to know more about the show, you can check us out online at pixelatedaudio.com for show notes and track lists. We can also be found on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Pixelated Audio.
Yeah, and you can leave feedback on the website as well. We really appreciate hearing all your guys' comments. There's also iTunes. We have a few shout outs to give. There is Classic MWK, who left us a really great review. Wanted to say thank you very much. And also Zombie Mike. Wanted to say we really appreciate the feedback and you guys taking the time to let us know on iTunes as well. That's really cool of you.
And if you're new to the podcast, you can check out some of our past episodes, like the Mega Man Power Battles episode that we did. We had a great Kirby's Dream Land for the Game Boy, which Brian did a great Game Boy audio breakdown.
Oh, thanks. That was fun.
Yeah. And another awesome handheld episode was the Sonic Pocket Adventures for the Neo Geo Pocket Color. So make sure to check those out.
Yeah, that music was so good. Neo Geo Pocket Color, man. I tell you. Oh, man. 3 channels, amazing music. It was fun. So I do actually have a little announcement here. I started a new show called The Impulse Project, and it's basically this podcast that features music from the demo scene and the tracking community. It's not stuff that we would normally play on this show because, this is all video game related, but, it's something that I've had, these modules and these files and this music that I'm going to play has all this, nostalgia for me because I heard all this stuff growing up. I heard a lot of stuff. And there's so much music out there, and these composers are phenomenal, and they do a lot of really interesting things. So it was like, I want to be able to share this with people, and it doesn't really fit on our show, but there is, a space for it, I think. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So if you want to know more about the show, you can go to impulseproject.info. It's also on iTunes. The first episode's up, so you can check that out. It's kind of like an intro to the show episode, but it'll definitely give you a sense for what to expect down the road. But yeah, James will be on, Ed from Pixel Tunes and a bunch of other people and friends, and hopefully we learn a lot of stuff, play a lot of cool music.
Yeah, it's a super fun, laid-back sound. An example of some of the stuff that Brian's talking about is we played a track in the Battle Squadron episode that we recently released.
Oh, the Imploder.
Yeah, it's from the Imploder stuff, and it's so amazing that this hardware is used to make stuff that's outside of games, and it just blows your mind how good it is.
Yeah, I play a lot of this stuff for you, and you're like, man, why isn't this in a game? Like, why hasn't this been released in a game yet? And so it's unfortunate because a lot of it has gone, unknown or unnoticed. And there's a huge tracking community, but nobody else is really doing it in the podcast space. And I think it might be kind of fun. So definitely check it out. And I hope you guys like the show. You can let us know. Pixelated Audio is always going to be, our go-to show, and we're always going to maintain the focus and keep our episodes 100% for you guys as well. Anyways, the track taking us out, James, what do we have?
Oh, it's by far, I think, both of our favorite tracks from
big time.
This soundtrack. The track is called End of War. Super intense. It's got a lot more of a dark feel to it.
Right.
Very battle, heroic, good versus evil kind of things to it. And it's just such a great track.
Yeah, it's a really cool one. It's funny because we were looking for like a remix to play for this episode, and it's like, well, good luck because how many people have played this game. Now there's a few out there, but it's kind of like dancey. It's like the same track with just like a dance beat over it. And it's like, no. But this track is a good way to end the show. You guys are going to absolutely love it. Thank you so much for listening, and check back in the feed in a few weeks for a new episode.